Hello, everybody, and welcome to the second week of the Rise into Your Crown World Summit for Women, bringing creativity in the arts out of exile at our mats. But Amir Tashem will savor what we have here as representatives of the field. And I welcome Toby. Thank you for waiting up for us. It's almost 12 o'clock at night. I can't believe that tonight has gone so long. It was so rich. I struggle to stop people during their presentations. Their whole neshamas were coming out.
It's okay. I saw things about Rivka and Yitzchak. We put on our original show on Rivka this year, so I wore the t-shirt even though you could see it.
Amazing.
I walked out in the middle of a rehearsal, but I'm still awake, so feel free to play the interview. I'm probably too sleepy to do it live now anyway, but I'll be happy to respond to comments in the chat or about that. I just want to say one thing before you begin, Tamar.
Sure.
I wrote this to you in the chat, but I don't know if you were able to follow everything so quickly. Na'ama, your teacher.
Yeah.
I met her in the late 60s or early 70s. She's a sister of a friend of mine. And I was so impressed with her that our oldest daughter's name is Sarah Na'ama.
Wow.
And even though Ashkenazim don't give names of people who are still alive, but she was the inspiration for that name.
Wow, like her name, so is she.
Yeah, she's very special, very special.
Toby, do you want me to read your bio? I don't remember if we read it on your interview. So let's play.
I don't think we read it on the interview, so go ahead.
Okay. Toby Klein Greenwald is an award-winning theater director who has founded, co-founded, or directed more than 12 theater companies or educational theater projects. She's the artistic director of Raise Your Spirits Theater, in which capacity she has co-authored lyrics and directed musicals on Esther, Noach. Is that Noach or Noah?
Well, in Hebrew, it's Noach.
Noach, Ruth, Devorah, Benos Salafchad, and Rebecca. She is the co-creator and director of Mikvah the Musical, Music and Monologues from the Deep. She's the co-founder and producing director of the Door interactive theater troupe, which grew out of the award-winning psychology website wholefamily.com, of which she is co-founder and editor-in-chief. She founded and directs Nana Playback Dance Theater and Playback Hamra. She taught playback in Ramat Beit Shemesh in Jerusalem and lectured in playback theater in the Institute for Expressive Therapists in Jerusalem College for Women. She created a new method called Biblio Playback Medrash, on which she gives workshops in Israel and abroad, and in which she will be giving a workshop at this summit, and lectures also on cinema midrash. Toby directed theater programs for youth at risk and who suffered trauma, including high school girls from Gush Katif, following the destruction of their communities, and students who had dropped out of school in other places. You'll hear about that in the interview. She advised students of Sderot in a theater project called Children of the Kassams. In earlier years, she taught drama to students in Sfat, who were survivors of the Ma'alot terror attack, and directed a youth theater project on the Russian former prisoner of Tzion Ari Volsky. She is an award-winning journalist, a poet, a teacher of Tanakh, creative writing, and English literature, the translator of In the Land of Prayer and editor of The Golden Pens of Gush Etzion, and the initiator and editor of Listening to God by Rabbi Shlomo Riskin. She is a graduate of Jerusalem College for Women of Hebrew University and of Bar Ilan. She lives in Efrat with her husband and her children and grandchildren. Live throughout the land of Israel. Wow, Toby. Quite something. So welcome, Toby. It is such a joy and an honor to have you join us at the Rise into Your Crown Summit this year. I'm so excited for what you have to share with us. Thank you for coming.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I think what you're doing is absolutely incredible. And it's a beautiful thing to bring together women from all over the world. My personal story is that I wrote my first poem at the age of 7. I directed my first play at the age of 11. And then I continued all through high school writing, plays, directing plays, writing in general. But there was no there's no outlet. When I was growing up, there was no outlet for a Torah observant woman or really man to get involved in theater. Like Jewish theater was unheard of. But my other great love, lahavdil, my other great love was learning Torah. So I went on to Michlala and I got a degree there and I learned Torah and I taught Torah for many years. And I would incorporate creative methods into my Torah teaching. And I would incorporate theater, I would incorporate writing, art. And I always saw a very strong connection between Torah and creativity. And as far as our Jewish lives go, our everyday Jewish lives go, they're full of theater. And if you think about it, everything we do, again, I feel like on the one hand, I have to say lahavdil, and on the other hand, what do we do on Shabbat, on Chagim? We set the Pesach, Bichlal, we set the stage. We have actors, we have a script, we have props, and this is what our lives are. So our lives are very expressive. Jewish lives are not just in the mind. Jewish lives are very tactile, and I think that kind of reflects the tactileness. I don't know if that's a word of the tangibleness of theater. And as far as creativity goes, I think there's another element to theater. I think that all theater is therapeutic. And I want to say that I've had really an incredible zchut to be involved in many theater projects that, in addition to being enjoyable and expressing Torah and expressing Judaism, they had the element of, I would call it soft therapy. It wasn't as if we sat there and analyzed our actors, but there was something about acting out characters that is very meaningful. I'd like to share with you some of the projects that I've worked on. My first experience of working in theater with children who had undergone trauma was in 1975 when I worked with children in Tzfat who had been in a terror attack in Ma'alot, where 22 children from their school were murdered by terrorists. And I was asked by the assistant principal and the school psychologist to give them a drama class. And these children came to me very traumatized. They were 8th graders. And by the time we finished that year, they had opened up and I remember the last session I did with them, we went out to the hills of Tzfat and I said to them, it was before Pesach because I got married on Rosh Chodesh Nisan, and that's when I finished the year because I moved back to Jerusalem. And I said, we're going out into the hills and I would like you to pretend that you are the Bnei Yisrael who are leaving Egypt. And they ran, jumping happily through the hills and joyfully and singing and dancing. I said, these were children who one of them was still limping from having jumped out of a window to save his life in that terror attack. They had undergone such trauma and this had opened them up. And that was one of my first experience in working with children and working with theater and children who had suffered trauma. Another experience I had was working with the girls from Gush Katif after they had been expelled from their homes. And at first they said to me, and it was a special project, and the principal said to me, the goal is to just help them get through the next year and hopefully put on a play. And they said, one thing for sure we will not write about is Gush Katif. But after 6 months of me doing improvisational playback exercises with them, they said, we want to write a play on Gush Katif. And this was so incredibly it opened them up, and it was real therapy for them. And I remember that when I was doing preparation exercises for them, one of the exercises I gave them was pretend that you're improv yourself as an animal. And one of the girls pretended she was a turtle. And she said, I'm a turtle because I'm carrying my house on my back. I gave them an exercise once, create like a machine. And they created a tear machine, T-E-A-R, a tear machine, where they passed a little bottle from one to the other, and the last one in line put like the bottle in her eyes, as if, and she was finally able to cry. And these are some of the experiences that I've had with children who went through trauma. Our Raise Your Spirits Theater, which I'm a co-founder of, and I'm the artistic director of, we've been around for 21 years. We started during a terrible intifada in 2001. And we've had women and girls in our cast who've suffered death in the family, abuse, children who've suffered social problems, learning disabilities, ADHD, women who've been divorced, all kinds of stories. And they've told us over and over again how this has helped them survive. We had one story when we were doing, the most difficult of all, when the year we were performing the story of Esther, and the son of one of the women in our cast was a soldier in Shechem chasing terrorists, and he was killed in that capacity. And she got up from Shiva, and she got up on stage, and she spoke. And she spoke about how we have to go on. And after the show, she rejoined us again, and she was on stage with us again. We've had stories of, I worked with a group of kids at risk in a school for dropouts. And we put on the play Pippin because it's about the son of a king who's looking for himself. And we changed that. We got permission to change some of the scenes. We got permission. I wrote directly to Stephen Schwartz, and I said, these kids are all from religious homes. They were, unfortunately, most of them were no longer religious themselves, but I said, we have to tone down some things, and he gave me permission. And I remember they showed up for the first rehearsal with piercings and torn jeans, none of them with kippot. They were, totally like out of it. And I told him, in 3 months, there will be 400 people in our local community center theater standing on their feet and cheering for you. And they looked at me like I was crazy. They'd been thrown out of their schools, thrown out of their families, some of them. Some of them had, some of them had been in juvenile court for drugs. And they said, it's not going to happen. But 3 months later, there were 400 people standing on their feet, cheering for them. And this changed their lives. The women in Raise Your Spirits, going back there for a moment, I remember once there was a girl who came to audition, and their family had just made Aliyah, and she was obviously very socially awkward. And she also wasn't talented. So we said among ourselves, well, okay, she's in, because obviously she needs this. Her father came up to me about a year later at a Kiddush, and he said, you saved my daughter's life. And so in addition to trying to be creative and professional, and I really take pride in that every project that I work with should be the highest level of professionalism, but we know how we have touched the soul. And I have a chapter in a Hebrew book called To Touch a Soul. And this is my goal. When I work in theater, my goal is to touch the souls, not only of the audience, but to touch the souls of every single actor and actress, and to bring them out, and to bring them closer to Hashem, and to bring them closer to each other, and to help them solve all the difficulties that they are dealing with. I have a playback group. It's an improvisational theater group. We've performed for battered women's shelters. We've performed for women down in State Road who were under rocket fire. In addition to regular performances. And you hear these stories, and in playback, for example, you use both humor and drama to bring out the story, to reflect the story. And I remember a lady in State Road describing how she heard the siren, and they have like 15 seconds to run for cover. And she was describing how she was running for cover. In another case, another one was describing how she was in the shower and her son was there with his friend, and she had to somehow quickly get a robe around herself. So, and I mean, and we were able to tell these stories not only with pathos, but also with humor. And humor is something that helps someone. Humor, in Hebrew, you say humor meshachrer. Humor liberates. There's something liberating about it. But you all, now there's another, I'll give you just one more, before I talk about what I'm going to be doing my session on, actually. In addition to our Raise Your Spirits biblical plays, I'm the co-producer and the director of a play called Mikveh the Musical, Music and Monologues from the Deep. And this is all based on true stories. And we have original music, we have true stories, and the one who began it and who I'm her co-producer is Myra Guterman, our choreographer and music director is Adina Feldman, who's a very well-known singer. And our group includes women who are, since I'm saying this in English, Datilu Umi, modern Orthodox, Haredi, and traditional. And we all work together. We have the Tofa'ah band also, some of the women from the Tofa'ah band, the Yona, you have Yona, they're also together with us. And one of the women in our group is paralyzed from the waist down. And she's one of our actresses. And she happens to tell the funniest monologue. She recites the funniest monologue of the night. How can you find humor in something like that? You'll have to see the show. How does woman Toby, who's in a wheelchair? And these here also, they're full of stories that include both beautiful stories and happy stories and also difficult stories, hydrophobia, abuse. And because this is our life, this is a part of our life as Jewish women. And the biblio playback that I'll be doing in the conference, in the summit, is based, I took two methods and I combined them. I took the method of bibliodrama, when we learn a certain part of Tanakh and we speak in the voice of the biblical characters. And I took playback, which is improvisation, and I put them together. So what we do there, I call it biblio playback, is we look at the stories of the Tanakh and we try to get into them ourselves. And so I'm just going to give two examples, very moving examples that happened when I did this. When I did one on Ruth, and this time I'll probably be doing it on Ruth. When I did one on Ruth, there was a woman who came to one of my workshops and she sat there in tears and she said, my son is in another country dating a non-Jewish woman. And I've been so devastated by this. And this session has taught me maybe there's some way that I can reach out to her and that I could bring her into Judaism. And this has given me new hope. And another story we had when I was doing biblio playback was about Yosef. And there was a woman, a Rebbitzin, who was in her 60s, who all of us had been very quiet for the whole semester that I had been teaching this. And all of a sudden she opened up and she said, I was the youngest one in my family and I was always pampered and my siblings were jealous of me. And she suddenly spoke in a voice coming from somewhere she was able to combine because it was once removed. It wasn't that she was going to a therapist and pouring out her heart. Oh, I grew up with siblings who were jealous of me. She acted out the part of Yosef, and the other women in the group acted out the parts of the brothers. And it was a wonderful experience. We had an Atara conference in Jerusalem in 2018. Also, then I did Ruth, and women talked about leaving home and what it meant for them to leave home. And this was something, all of a sudden you realize, I mean, I always realize it, but some people, there's the Tanakh, there's the Torah, there's the Nevi'im, there's Ketuvim, and then there's our everyday lives. And you say, no, this is your life. These people, these dumiyot, these personalities in the Torah and the Tanakh, they were people who you can really connect with. And this is something that one is able to do through theater. I've probably gone over my time, so
we're right at time. You've incredible how much you fit in, and wow, just to hear, it's so essential to hear where it's coming from in you and the confluence with healing work and spirituality. This is incredible. So Toby, what a joy to have you, and thank you for sharing, decades of work and seeing the blossoming of so many. And Klal Yisrael should just only have good things to act out, but in the meantime, using theater as a tool for healing and for expression and for growth.
You should just be blessed in your work. Thank you so much for joining us,
Thank
and
you.
looking forward to your workshop.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for screening that.
That was incredible. That was incredible.
Well, I'm the
Anybody
last
have
of the
any-
night, so I guess.
Yeah, we are so over time. Oh my goodness, we're a lost case. But if anybody
Mm.
has a question or a comment for Toby, wants to come on.
Thank you for all the sweet things that you're writing in the chat. I'll have to save this. Save chat here. Save chat.
Yeah, I personally, I was touched by your ability to bring yourself to tears in your speaking.
Oh yeah,
because
that happens to me a lot.
that is so much what drama is
Yeah.
living. You're living that catharsis with your theater, living
Yeah,
your art
well,
form.
you know, I really honestly feel like every actor, actress of any age who I've worked with, I feel like they're my children. They continue to be my children even years later. So
And how it's entwined with your learning and your love of Torah, love of
yeah,
Klal Yisrael.
that is, it's so when we're writing a new biblical musical, for me the most joyful, I mean, I love it all, but I think, and I love writing the lyrics and I love directing, but the learning will always be the most
The essence.
the essence, right? And when I open up a sefer and I'm working on a new show, I just feel this tremendous surge of indescribable joy that, and because Torah, and I often say that our tagline that we sometimes quote is Ki mitzion tetzei Torah. There are many different ways that Torah can come out of Zion, and we're so pleased that they've been performed really all over the world. I don't know if I even told you the story. I know it's late already, but there's no one after me anyway. Our show Ruth was performed in India by a man, a non-Jewish man who conducts street theater with poor children in India. And he went online and he looked for a musical on Ruth. I guess he plugged in musical on Ruth, and we came up and we licensed it to him. And he sent us afterwards photographs of these little Indian children, with the dots on their foreheads, dressed in biblical costumes, who would put on the story of Ruth. That's in addition to all the Jewish schools and camps, and et cetera. But yeah, so it was very meaningful to be able to send it out to the world.
Thank you so much, Toby.
I
And
have a
I just
Kibbutz
love how you
Chatzimah Tova.
I just love how you ended it really on coming back to the essence of really what binds us as a community is the Torah that we share and our role as women. Creativity and the arts is our theme this year, but what's eternal is really our connection to those three prongs, Torah, Hashem, and Klal Yisrael, because they're really all one. And through it, we are one. So thank you, everybody. Thank you for your incredibleness. Each and every one of the presenters tonight was just beyond. And just wishing, may Hashem send us brachas into the kli that we are building together, b'siyata d'shmaya. And all my love, thanks for staying up past midnight, Toby. Lila Tov.